So friends, convicted felons generally can't serve in the U.S. military. But we're going to potentially allow a convicted felon to be Commander-in-Chief of America's armed forces? Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, a convicted felon in charge of America's military forces will endanger not just our national security. It will endanger the lives of the men and women who serve. It will endanger our troops. You know, I just came across this recent piece in USA Today, and I want to quote it at some length and then discuss it. But I want to quote it at length because it is really important regarding the safety, the security, the well-being of our troops, our men and women in uniform. I don't think there's anything more important. Here's the headline. As a convicted felon, Trump isn't fit to lead America's military as Commander-in-Chief. And that article begins, former president and convicted felon Donald Trump should not become America's next Commander-in-Chief. His criminal record and despicable behavior undermine national security, as well as trust, leadership, and morale among the men and women who risk their lives to defend our nation. Over the past 3 decades, Trump has been a defendant or plaintiff in more than 4,000 lawsuits, and recently, a jury found him guilty on 34 counts of falsifying business records to conceal or commit a crime. And it was only the first of the criminal trials Trump faces. Trump's lack of ethical standards and integrity goes against everything the U.S. military stands for. He has proved that under pressure, he will crack. If he were to become Commander-in-Chief again, he might well compromise our country by giving in to coercion or revealing secrets that could get Americans killed. A felon serving as both leader of the free world and Commander-in-Chief would disrupt the military's culture and institutional structure as we know it. National security keeps our military members alive. Heck, it keeps us all alive. Allowing someone who flagrantly disregards the law and authority of any manner to lead our armed services would not keep our nation secure. Cybersecurity and international espionage are a dangerous game, and for someone like Trump to have the cheat codes would be like showing your child how to use one tap to make in-app purchases, then telling them not to buy any games. America's adversaries are watching and taking notes. They would welcome the former president's tarnished moral compass because it could be used to weaken America's national security. Former military leaders, such as retired Marine Corps General John Kelly, who served during the Trump administration, have called him dangerous and unfit. Trump has injured relationships between the United States and its allies, and his actions on the international stage were seen as weak and unstable, directly harming diplomatic relations. And with Trump back in the White House, our nation's global reputation and credibility would be hurt at a time when threats from China, Iran, and Russia appear to be growing. As both a felon and the Commander-in-Chief, Trump's lack of character would undercut morale in our armed services, leading to greater problems with retention. In Bob Woodward's book, Rage, Trump told the former advisors, "My effing generals are a bunch of you know what he's referring to there." It wasn't the first time or the last time he berated our military's most revered leaders. Remember when Trump called service members who made the ultimate sacrifice losers and suckers? I do. I do too. But let's finish with this, friends. Felons generally can't serve in the military. In the Values and Character section of the Go Army website, it states that a person convicted of a felony is generally not permitted to join the military. So how on earth should a felon be allowed to lead the entire military if he couldn't join because of his criminal record? Our nation now teeters on a cliff. Will a felon be elected to lead America's military and tasked with helping to instill a warrior's ethos, morale, and camaraderie among those who protect our nation in a hostile world? Whether voters choose to embrace or ostracize the convicted former president will shape the image and culture of America's military for decades to come. So friends, when I read that piece, I was prompted to pull out my old Army Officer's Guide. It's sitting here underneath old Abe. This is the 43rd edition of, let me put President Lincoln back where he belongs. This is the 43rd edition, published in 1985. This is the book that I referred to early and often when I was a U.S. Army officer. It's been published, I think, first in 1930, and it has been updated regularly. And what I want to do is read just two very short passages from the 1985 edition of the U.S. Army Officer's Guide. And, you know, it's about 40 years old now, so some of it may sound a little outdated, a little old-timey, a little passé. But I want to read these two short passages, and then I want to see how Donald Trump sizes up to the expectations of an Army officer. So first, under the heading, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Ethical Codes, and Code of Conduct, and for those of you who don't know, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, we generally shorthand it as the UCMJ, that is a set of criminal laws that apply to service members. Just like we have the federal criminal laws. So, for example, if you assault a federal officer, you've committed a federal crime. If you kidnap someone across state lines, you've committed a federal crime. Then we have state criminal laws. So if you engage in conduct that violates the law of a particular state while you're in that state, you could be charged with a state crime. Well, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, the UCMJ, represents the criminal laws that apply to all service members. So in this section, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Ethical Codes, Code of Conduct, it says, specific codes establish standards and impose requirements on military personnel. The Uniform Code of Military Justice imposes many restrictions upon members of the armed forces far beyond those which pertain to the ordinary citizen. The Code of Conduct establishes standards for military personnel in combat and for prisoners held by an enemy. Collectively, they establish an ideal of national service, a way of life, essential for the nation's perpetual security as the final rampart of defense of our people and our Constitution. And now, friends, let's have a quick look at just one of the codes of expected conduct for an Army officer and see how Donald Trump stacks up. Tradition of being a lady or gentleman. It is a part of the code and traditional that officers are expected to be ladies or gentlemen. This must be manifest in their moral standards, their conduct, appearance, manners, and mannerisms, as well as the professional standards they establish in the performance of duty. It must be displayed in the things they avoid doing. They avoid vulgarity. They do not avoid the payment of just bills or tender bad checks. Wait, there's more. Their credit rating is high. Their word is accepted in and out of service. Their opinions bear weight. As a group, they have the confidence and trust of the people. The officers themselves must guard and cherish this standing, as they must realize that the unfit among them reflect upon and damage the standing of all. The bad behavior, the unbecoming behavior of one damages all. Donald Trump mocks and demeans women. Donald Trump mocks and demeans men. Donald Trump mocks and demeans service members. Donald Trump mocks and demeans former prisoners of war, like the late John McCain. And of course, when it comes to Donald Trump's bad behavior, we're just getting warmed up. How about the part that talks about paying your just debts? Remember that little nearly $500 million judgment for Donald Trump's years of business fraud? But friends, here is what is perhaps most important, going back to the safety of our troops. You know, there are laws in place, the Geneva Conventions, the law of war, how military members and civilians are supposed to be treated in and around a combat zone or when they're taken as a prisoner of war. But here's what we know, and we know it to our core. Do you think other countries are going to give one whit about things like the Geneva Conventions, how enemy combatants, or civilians for that matter, should be treated in a time of war? Do you think they're going to give one whit about any of that if they know that the leader of America's armed forces, the commander-in-chief, is a convicted felon? No. That will endanger our troops. That will endanger our national security. And some might say, yeah, but there's no constitutional prohibition against a convicted felon being president of the United States and commander-in-chief of the armed forces. True, but how about we apply some damn common sense and some concern for the safety of our soldiers and for our own national security, and make sure convicted felon Donald Trump is never put in a position where he can endanger the men and women in uniform, by extension, endangering all of us. Because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.